Whether you are an amateur competitor or a professional bodybuilder, if you are going to be subjected to having to travel a significant distance for a show, one of the questions you are likely going to ask yourself is, what do I do with my nutrition and my approach to flying? If that is you, or if you're a coach that has a client that does that, this video is for you. So the two primary things that most individuals will have concern with when it comes to flying, especially when they're flying large distances, will be how do we manage the client's digestion and how do we manage the client's fluid retention and or fluid balance so that they don't actually get fluid retention. A lot of the time, athletes of mine are asking how long before a show should I get to it? Now, the answer is always more is better than less. I would say, in an ideal world, we'd want at least 3 to 5 days of, acclimatizing to that new area, potentially, especially if there's, a different degree of temperature there, or a different degree of humidity. However, if we're talking solely about managing digestive health, about managing fluid balance while flying, and an individual wants to get to their new destination with the least amount of stress involved, these are the things that we can do. So why, first and foremost, might an individual suffer from digestive issues or fluid retention on a flight? Now, there are more than a handful of reasons proposed, but I would say that there are three main issues that most individuals are going to have to contend with. Issue number one is that there is going to be a drop in cabin pressure inside a plane. With that comes a mild to moderate effect on even then the pressure within the digestive tract, and also to some degree there's going to be a change in the oxygenation of the air, which can change how a person's body responds to stressful situations. So that's number one. Number two, and the primary one that I think most people will have an issue with, is a change in the circadian rhythm of the individual. That is that the body clock that they typically run on for the sleep and wake cycle is going to change midway through their travel period, especially if they're going long distances. Now, I've got a lot of Australian clients heading to America. This is a huge one for us. Taking somebody who is currently existing on the east coast of the world and moving them to the west coast, or the northern to the southern hemisphere even more specifically, is going to disrupt those waking hours, and this is going to have a huge impact on their ability to digest food and also to manage their energy. And then the third one is simply just circulation. With a change in cabin pressure, we have a slight change in circulation, but primarily the circulation is affected by the fact that most individuals are not used to sitting for as long as they do, and too many people park their bums in their seats and do not move. So some other minor considerations here is that we may have a lack of parasympathetic action going on a regular basis while flying because it's an otherwise stressful situation. There may be some dehydration at play that people have to consider, especially flying within close proximity to their show. And then less of an issue for competitors, but more for us lay folk, and that is food variability is going to come into play. The food on plane is typically going to have a much higher sodium content to drive flavor, because actually our palate changes during this different cabin pressure, whereby flavor sensors are actually decreased, and thus the airline food companies need to increase the flavoring. Now, with all of these things in play, what do we do for an athlete who has an aesthetic goal like a bodybuilder while flying? I'm going to give you 4 main strategies that I use for all of my guys when traveling, and hopefully this will give you some assistance in your next time while you travel. Number 1, smaller meals. Seems simple, but less stress on the GI from a volume perspective is typically going to aid in better digestion. So stick with slightly smaller meals. Now, this is a difficult one because there's lots of time spent on a plane doing nothing, and individuals who are already hungry are going to struggle with smaller meals. But if we're talking about maximizing our return on investment here, smaller meals are the way to go. Within those smaller meals, I'll typically go for lower fats, just to help minimize any slow gastric transit time. The longer we have food sitting in the GI, the greater the opportunity for fermentation, which is only going to then exacerbate the bloat. I would also refrain from consuming significant and or any quantity of carbonated beverages like carbonated water and or sugar-free soft drinks, because the carbonation is usually exacerbated while on a plane as well. I would keep sodium stable, and I would also limit the amount of highly fermentable foods. If you are used to consuming them, you may be okay, but it might be advantageous to switch either out things like beans and or to reduce vegetables that aren't low in FODMAPs, those being highly fermentable fibers in your fruits and vegetables. Number 2, food timing. Where possible, it might be worth trying to consider shifting your eating times to match up with the new time zone that you are going to, so that you are already ahead of the game, but not to completely flip it on its head. If your 4 p.m. is normally a 6 a.m. in your new time zone, this is an appropriate time to consume food, not an issue at all. If your 4 p.m. is at 2 a.m., maybe you might try and shift your normal 4 p.m. to say a 6 p.m. meal, so that you can then get to a 4 a.m. eating time, so that the distance between the two is not as significant as what it would be in scenario number 2. Also, you will see in a check-in video that I'm going to be doing for my client in this backstage video here, that we're going to potentially try and shift the sleeping hours as well, so that we can rematch them up with that circadian rhythm in his new time zone, not in his current time zone, and usually we'll set food up in this manner as well. Number 3, increase your hydration density. It's generally not necessary to increase the hydration quantity, in that if you're normally consuming 4 liters in a day, you don't necessarily have to consume 5, 6, or 7 liters to drive more diuresis, but rather you can actually increase the density of fluid consumption per hour by about 20 to 30% in order to drive up diuresis, so that you are urinating more while on the flight. Now, some individuals may have GI disturbance due to dehydration when it comes to flying typically, but in this instance, we generally won't find that with a bodybuilder, because our food is controlled, our sodium is controlled, the types of foods that we're eating is controlled, and actually driving up diuresis here will do 2 things. Number 1, it keeps the fluid balance ticking over, and number 2, it will force you to get up and move, which is super important, because that comes into my 4th point, which is movement. This is the one that a lot of people forego, and it has the greatest effect as far as I'm concerned in regards to minimizing fluid retention in the periphery. That is, every 60 to 120 minutes, my expectation would be for a client to get up, do some steps, walk the aisle, do some stretching, do some bodyweight squats, do some calf raises, get circulation moving as if you normally would. It is very rare for a bodybuilder to typically sit for longer than 2 hours at a time. They may lay for that period of time, but it's very rare to sit. Now, the pressure on the back of the hamstrings going into the bottom of the lower limb, into the calves, with the added cabin pressure and the change in the sort of circadian rhythm, this is a recipe for fluid retention in the ankles. You can eradicate this almost completely just by moving regularly. In the same sense that I mentioned before, client Ethan Gohari, who we're going to have a look at in a second, and we're also going to check in with him after this video in regards to seeing how well he handled fluid balance on this flight to America. He managed to get in 10,000 steps between Australia and America. If you choose to, you can manage fluid balance exceptionally well. Now, last but not least, while on a flight, I would also consider the potential introduction of 2 groups of supplements that may afford you some benefit on the flight. Number 1, digestive support. If you're somebody who suffers from gas generally, or bloating, and or you find that flights are something that do this to you, it's worth considering a small introduction of like an anti-gas medication or an anti-flatulence medication, anything to try and minimize the amount of fermentation capacity of the stomach. Not a bad idea. Similarly, it's not a bad idea to consider introducing a general digestive aid with meals, just to help from an enzymatic perspective, just to help that food break down and digest a little bit easier. The second category is sleep, and you'll see this discussed as well with Ethan on his check-in, which is coming up next. And that is some things that you may find will help drive a faster adaptation to the change in circadian rhythm, which is to introduce things that are either specifically melatonin itself, which helps engage sleep in humans, or even in combination with some of its precursors like 5-HTP, some of the cofactors within that conversion of serotonin into melatonin being P5P, which I speak about with Ethan, and then some just other supportive agents that may be beneficial here. Might be something like an L-theanine, just to help with relaxation, just to bring you into more of a parasympathetic state without being actually a sedative. But should you find benefit, even a light introduction of something like diphenhydramine, which you'll find in antihistamines that make you drowsy, not a bad idea to engage the sleep process, especially if we're talking about, again, taking somebody from a 4 p.m. period on the flight, which is then actually now the 12 a.m. of their new destination and we want to try and engage sleep at that time, it's a fantastic way to do this. So these are the things worth considering when it comes to flying. If you so choose to, like I said, I think you have the opportunity to get to your new destination with pretty much no fluid retention in your ankles. If you so choose to do these things, it's very simple. Controlled nutrition, controlled hydration, controlled movement. That's it in a nutshell. So final phase here, man, is just get this last little bit of fat off, enter into peak week where we need you to be, continue to pull down the stress by modifying your training, and then also obviously introducing some more food, and we are done, mate. So super happy with this look, dude. I'm going to go through the video in a second anyway, because I think it's more indicative always as the shot. But I mean, like, condition here is great. Certainly a little bit of flatness coming in through legs now, but no concerningly higher degree of flatness. All of it is going to be manageable and manipulatable come peak week, which is exactly where we need to be. It's probably the first time ever, man, I think I've really seen this lower lat into erectors look, and even trap through here, get this kind of degree of separation. So new levels of conditioning officially hit. 97.2 kilos, 1 kilo above the cap. Absolutely fucking perfect place to be, bro. I'm super happy. So execution on this video too for me, bro, is very, very good. I'm liking all of the positioning, like nice and tall and front relaxed. Setting up here a little bit more square and front on, which I'm really happy to see as well. As we've spoken about before, that sort of overly turned, like in this position, is fucking awesome when you're on your own, but it can sometimes be a detriment to your width when you're on stage compared to other individuals. It would be even worth noting, like depending on who you stand next to, man, we may need to be smart about which poses you actually hit. Is if they're standing front on and it's very square and you stand sort of quarter turned, then you need to be mindful of that. This is your introductory routine is really good, man. Super professional in regards to execution. Conditions great in every body part. Dry, grainy. Absolutely fucking stoked, mate. So for these next couple of days, mate, nothing is really going to change, okay? So for the next couple of days, I'll roll over to here and I will jump on to Thursday. So we have delts and arm Thursday. Well, let me just go to the overview for you for a second. Delts and arms Thursday, back and chest Friday, Saturday is fly day. That will obviously be a rest day. We might get in a light session here on the Sunday, and I'm looking at probably doing a very light leg session. This will likely just be extensions and curls, just sort of before weighing, because I think 2 days post for you for legs is pretty good. We definitely dip off in flatness when we've had some time. Like today's check-in here at Wednesday, even from Monday's lower, is still very, very good. So we do want to give your legs a little bit of a touch-up, because I don't want them to run flat going into the show. Obviously not typically normal for some individuals, but for you, it's the beauty of individual specificity, mate. So same low day as we were doing on Tuesday, tomorrow being Thursday, or when you wake up this morning. Same again on Friday, nothing will change there. Same degree of cardio and same degree of steps. So 13K steps, 200K cal cardio done post-workout, exactly the same for this one. Disregard this note of fluid. This is me just making note of your general fluid intake, because I'm going to talk you through how we're going to use this to our advantage on fly day. So Thursday, Friday, basically a rinse repeat, man. Nothing for us to do here. That should have us sitting into, if not on or below the cap. We'll certainly be below the cap by the time that we get to America on the Sunday morning when you wake up. I'm absolutely certain of that. And that's where we need to be. Then we can slowly start to bring this food up, find the look we want, hold the look, weigh in, get shit done, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. First show for us here is obviously, as we've spoken about previously, coming off the back of Dubai. We want to come in just really fucking sharp, more on the side of flat, and get the feedback that we need to get the feedback on. And then if we need to push fullness up, we can push fullness up. If they're happy with the look, they're happy with the look. Then we can modify accordingly for this next show. And then obviously for shows thereafter, we still have the opportunity to modify even further. So, but with the 6 p.m. weigh-in, we're limited in how much loading we can get done, just from a time perspective. Obviously, we can, play God a little bit there and use some rapid insulin to our advantage to try and get sugars down at a rate that is faster than what we would typically see without it. But with the goal being a sharper, erring on the side of flatter look for this particular show, I don't think it'll be necessary. And I also think we're going to be where we need to be coming into the show anyway. So this peak week will just be about taking the opportunities to slowly bring stress down with a food escalation and an output de-escalation. So, as I said, man, Thursday, Friday, no change. Saturday, fly day. I know you mentioned that you want to eat as little as possible so you don't have to get fucked around with flights and staff and all the rest of it. I appreciate it. However, so long as you don't take liquids like yogurt, cream or ice, oats, you should never have an issue. If you're going into a country like New Zealand or coming into Australia where organics are problematic, then we'd have an issue. If we were like an extended 24 to 35 hour sort of trip time, we would have an issue even just trying to keep things cool, because you wouldn't be able to take an ice pack with you either. So these things you won't have to worry about. So there's going to be a whey and fruit meal that you'll have before you get off the final flight, because that one's the least perishable. But for the 4 meals prior to that, man, I want you to still have pretty much normal food, because it's important that we sustain the same electrolyte balance. Fiber is going to come down ever so slightly, so that we can start to like just progressively get a little bit tighter through midsection. But otherwise, I want to keep electrolytes and hydration status stabilized through this flight with a little bit of a tick up in fluid intake, not so much in total, but more so in the rate of intake per hour, because that will help drive more diuresis while you're on the plane. And the more stability we have, the more predictability we have, and we know that we're not going to have an issue with any of the foods that you currently consume, because your digestion is fucking amazing. So the foods you can take will be super simple. You may want to freeze one, but I don't think you'll need to. So this is what it will look like, man. First and foremost, I'll talk you through this flight schedule, because this I think is good from a general scheme for you to look at. You fly at 11 on Saturday, and that is going to be basically 5 p.m. on a Friday night in America, okay? So you've got your American time zone here, you've got your Australian time zone here. This is just gonna have all of your notes of like when I want you to consume things. So if you're waking up at your normal time, 3 a.m. in Oz, it actually works out very well, because it's like waking up at 9 a.m. in Vegas, which is cool. From here, what I basically want you to be doing is consuming fluid at around about 300 ml per hour until you get on the flight. Once you get on the flight, for the waking hours that you're on the flight here, and then down here through LAX into Vegas, I want you consuming at double the amount that you normally would, so 500 to 600 ml per hour. All right, so like if you lose like 1, 2, 3 hours, you should get in at least 1.5 to 2 liters on this part, and then you should get in at least 1.5 to 2 liters on this part. That in itself is going to drive diuresis, and you're going to be getting in, like another 2-ish liters anyway. So your total fluid intake for the day will be roughly the same, but the rate of consumption while awake on the flight, I want to be basically double, okay? So you can have this at like 600 ml per hour for both of these ones here. You normally consume it like 350 ml, 300 ml, so 600 ml an hour at least, all right? I've got 2 diets. There's a Saturday diet here, which is your normal flight day diet, and then there's the Saturday USA diet, which is the 2.0 diet I referred to down here. So you're gonna have meal 1 just before you get on the flight, meal 2 just before you go to sleep, meal 3 when you wake up and before you get off the flight, meal 4 in between flights, and then meal 5 once you're landed. You will have been able to go to the shops by then, but you'll have an easy meal to consume then. And then you've got meal 1 and meal 2, so it'll be 7 meals across this entire time. You'll be able to get this from the supermarket. You'll be home by 6 o'clock. It should be super easy for you to get done. A couple other important notes. I want you to try and sleep as much as you possibly can from 4 p.m. onwards Australian time, so that we can try and get you onto your sleep schedule as quick as possible when you land in America. Because of that, I want no caffeine from 8 a.m. in Australian time, so that it doesn't interfere with it. And if you can, a couple of things to take you. Sleep combo down here. If you can, a good dose of melatonin, some theanine, 5-HTP if you have it on hand. P5P is a B vitamin. It's usually in sleep products. If you don't have it, this one's not major. It's just a cofactor to the conversion of this into serotonin and then melatonin. And then diphenhydramine, optional, but it's basically prescription Benadryl. If you can get a prescription antihistamine that has some drowsiness in it, it would be smart to take it. They're very good for engaging sleep when you are typically not on a normal circadian rhythm. So if you could get that in here, that will kind of like kick that process to try and get melatonin reacting here. When you would normally be 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not going to be particularly advantageous for you. This will then line up quite nicely, right? So if you could do that, man, that would be sick. Then try and sleep as much as you possibly can through these hours until you basically are about to get off the plane. Wake up, have a meal, and if you've got any modafinil, you can do 50 to 100 milligrams here, and this will help keep you awake throughout the day without too much, effort. If you don't have this, then we can basically intersperse like 100 milligrams of caffeine every 2 to 3 hours. Once you land, though, fluid back to normal, and then I would do the same sleep combo again at like 8 p.m. in American time here, so that you can try and like get back on it, and then you should be almost pretty much on sleep schedule by then, man. But for the meal plan, electrolyte stability, food stability is the goal. So normal cream of rice, a rice meal in the morning instead of cream of rice, because this will be at the airport. You'll have to go through security. We won't fuck around with taking cream of rice. So rice meal plus almond butter and banana. Then you've got chicken, rice, veg, kiwi fruit. Chicken, rice, veg, kiwi fruit. Exact same meal, so you can just split it in half, super fucking easy. Then this meal, which is when you're in LAX pre-flight, this is like your non-perishable, so whey protein, a punnet of strawberries, and some dark chocolate, super easy for you to take. Note, you need to take diet right salt with you because we need to control for potassium in this meal, as it's otherwise devoid of it, and you're normally like reasonably high across all meals. Then once you are in Vegas at the Airbnb, you'll be able to get this meal in because you should have been able to have gone to the shops here, which is this one, meal 5. You land at 11, it'd be like roughly around about probably like 3 o'clock or so, which is fine. You can just get this in any time here when you get down there. Then your 2 meals for before bed in the afternoon when you arrive is back to your normal chicken veg meal with some fruit, and then back to your yogurt meal, which is normal. I want to put this back in for when you're there as well. And that, my friend, is the approach. So I'm going to send you all of these now. If there's any like questions, concerns, queries, let me know, man, and we'll go from there. From a supplementation perspective, man, we're going to pull that clen down by about 50% when we get there on the Sunday, so you won't have to take as much there. That'll pull that stress down, but still keep the metabolic sort of assistance in there, so we're not shifting the BMR too far from where it is now. Even though it's at 60 micrograms, it's nothing major, so we'll just pull it down just as baseline. Most of your subs probably won't change, but obviously with the things that you've got on hand for you there, orals, like, whether or not we use anything like an AI, an additional oral, etc., is yet to be decided at this stage, man. I don't think we will, because the look is fucking fantastic, and I'm not about to try and create something that doesn't need to be created, because the look is already fucking fantastic, man. And like I said to you, and consistency breeds predictability. That's the name of the game here, man. So, my bro, that's it from me. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, I will see you on Friday on my screen again, and I'll chat to you then. Cheers, bro. Last but not least, please send me your weight morning as you normally do. So, how successful were we? Fucking successful. That right there is Ethan, now 24 hours out in the Dragon's Lair in Vegas, and officially, as predicted in my check-in, I don't know if you heard this in the check-in, but as predicted, 96 kilos on the dot the morning after arriving in America, which has set us up exceptionally well for this peak week. So Sunday morning, 6 days out, 96 kilos hit with a cap of 96.2, coming in relatively flat, but now really set up with a great opportunity to slowly reintroduce carbohydrates, slowly fill up the physique, keeping weight neutral. And come this Saturday, Ethan will be back on stage, and for the first time in America. So wish him luck. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, make sure you hit that subscribe button, click the bell for notifications, and leave us a comment below if you'd like any other content from Backstage with Flex Success. If you like this content, remember to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. See you in the next one. Train smarter, not just harder.